I'd like to start by having each of you look at the person closest to you right now and think about how you've adapted to their presence today. Maybe it's someone you know really well, and maybe it's someone you've never met before. But either way, at the very least, you've adapted by not occupying the same point in space that they're standing or sitting in right now. And I'd imagine that if they were to move, you may have to adapt your movement to theirs. Now, this beautiful dance of awareness and adaptation is what I believe consciousness to be. For me, consciousness is an awareness. It's an awareness that we are part of, but also separate from the fabric of our universe. And this heart of consciousness is also essential for our ecosystems. Every organism on this planet has adapted in a delicate balance with every other living creature. And we humans are no different. We are also part of our ecosystems. We are nature. Now, when I was a little girl, growing up in rural New York State in the US, this is actually a picture of my backyard. I loved nature. I loved climbing trees and catching caterpillars and putting them in jars and watching them turn into butterflies. And I dreamed that one day maybe I could become a scientist who could understand that nature and learn how to preserve it for my own children someday. Now, insects, like a caterpillar, are remarkable in their ability to change and adapt to their surroundings. And in fact, insects have adapted to almost every ecosystem on this planet. There are currently more species of insects here on this planet today than there are all other forms of multicellular life, plants and animals. And they have existed on this planet for nearly 500 million years. They're some of our world's oldest organisms. So I'm going to tell you a couple of stories of how cool these creatures are. This darkling beetle lives in the Namib deserts of Africa, where food and water are scarce. So in order to get water, it does something remarkable. Early in the morning, as the fog rises over the dunes, it sits on one of those dunes and waits with its back up in the air and its head facing downwards, and sits while tiny droplets of the condensed fog form upon its back and slowly roll down into its mouth so it can get its water for the day. Now, this creature has also adapted to get nutrients. This is a bola spider. It's not an insect, but it does eat them. And it does something different than many of its relatives. It doesn't spin a web, it actually uses this string called a bola. And at the end of the string is a sticky substance that contains the pheromones of moths that are very attractive to these moths. And it then becomes a cowboy. It swings its bola around like a lasso, and it attracts these moths at night, and they quickly get captured into this bola, and she reels them in to get her dinner. Now, this next creature, also has adapted to get its dinner, but it's adapted in a different way. It's adapted how it looks. Can you even see the insect in this picture? This is an orchid mantis, and the orchid mantis not only looks very much like a flower, but it also produces the chemicals of honeybees. So Asian honeybees are attracted to this flower, thinking that they're going to meet some other bees and also get their lunch, and they become lunch instead. And finally, this little Australian peacock spider has adapted to attract mates. Not only does it look kind of like a psychedelic clown, but it has adapted to breakdance in order to attract its mates. These remarkable adaptations of these insects have allowed them to coexist in their ecosystems. And this is the beautiful lesson that nature has taught us. Every plant, every animal, every microbe on this planet has adapted, not intentionally, but over millions of years of evolution to better coexist with each other and with its ecosystem. But we humans have not really paid attention to this lesson. For the bulk of our human existence, we have spent most of our innovation thinking of ways to try to get nature to adapt to us. And now we're in a climate crisis. Our biodiversity, like our insects, is decreasing rapidly. Our water is running out. People are dying across the world from heat and droughts and floods and pollution and disease. It's terrifying. And it affects most of all those of us who are least empowered to adapt to this crisis. But you see, fear has never made this world a better place. When any organism is afraid, our response is to simply run away from what's scaring us. And we cannot run away from this crisis. We simply can't run away from our planet. So I'm here to tell you today that you don't have to be afraid. And I have the audacity to stand on this stage and tell you right now that I believe the way we've been approaching the concept of the climate crisis for the past 50 years is actually wrong. In fact, I believe that we currently stand at one of the most remarkable points in our human history. For most of human civilization, innovation has meant becoming more. How do we live longer? How do we produce more food? How do we move faster? How do we build bigger cities? How do we communicate better with each other? And this innovation has led to remarkable adaptations just in the past century. Think about it. The internal combustion engine has allowed us to not only move faster than a horse, but to take to the skies and even to travel into outer space. And the invention of plastics has allowed us to store and transport objects across our planet like never before. And it has led to remarkable medical advances like wound healing. And the green revolution has fed millions of hungry people and has uplifted societies across the globe. But these same advances have pushed us beyond what our ecosystems can provide for. The internal combustion engine produces greenhouse gases that lead to global warming. And the resilience of plastics means that once they enter our ecosystems, they persist for virtually forever. And the green revolution has also resulted in intensive agriculture that has led to soil degradation and groundwater loss and the loss of our biodiversity. And that means we have to change. We have to change the way we innovate. We can no longer keep growing. We have simply outgrown our planet. So for the first time in human history, we have to do something different. We have to adapt. We have to change the way we live like this little bagworm has. We have to change the way we grow food, change the way we wear clothing, change the way we move, change the way we live with each other so that we are better in continuity and in relationship to our ecosystems. And this is an extremely challenging task, but it's also an opportunity. Think about it. We don't even have to go to Mars to figure out how to live on a different planet. We actually have to figure out how to live differently on this planet right now. And it can start today with you and I, because change starts with ourselves and it starts with our communities. And I have great news for you. There are already ways out there to grow and eat food differently. There are different ways to make and wear clothing. There's different ways to build cities and have transport, and smarter ways to live better in harmony with our ecosystems. So I hope you will join me and join our movement and join the hundreds of people that I work with each day who are working together for this adaptation. So I'd like you to do me a favor, okay? The next time someone mentions to you about the climate crisis, I want you to say, yes, we are in a crisis, and it is terrible, especially for the voiceless. But you and I here today talking, we have a voice, and we have an opportunity that no human has ever had before. We can change the very meaning of what it is to have human innovation so that we learn to better adapt and live in our ecosystems. I want to leave you with this. That little girl I was all those years ago who climbed those trees and caught those caterpillars grew up to become a scientist who studied the very insects that I loved all those years ago. Do you know why I love insects so much? Well, it's because many of them, like this painted lady caterpillar that lives right here in Spain, they spend most of their lives consuming as much as they possibly can with very little regard to the plants that they are destroying along the way. But eventually, when they've eaten too much, their bodies dissolve and they change into this beautiful winged creature who can take to the skies and who pollinates plants, and who can make new plants, and who can travel 2,500 miles all the way from Spain to tropical Africa. It is that remarkable adaptation that has allowed them to exist on this planet for 500 million years. And like this butterfly, I believe that you and I can adapt too. And I hope we do. So I'd like to welcome you to this new age of humanity, and I hope that we all learn to be a little more like insects. Thank you very much.